Madam Speaker, let's get something straight. Your mental self and your physical self are always connected in some way. Your mental health and your physical health are always connected in some way. You know, this especially pertains to cases in diseases where your mental health controls basically a large part of your physical health. And we have doctors who have watched you for so many times, who know about the conditions, who know about diseases best, are the ones who can calculate whether or not your mental health should be in a certain position. And if that betters you, if that is for your healing, we think that's for a good reason. We think that because of this, the placebo effect of lying to your patients because of this should be allowed. We're going to talk about two things with Prime Minister today. We're first going to talk about the role of doctors, but furthermore, we're going to talk about why in these cases these people can lie. We're going to give you a justification for that. Second, we're going to talk about this connection between mental health and physical health. We're further going to tell you how this placebo effect is going to go into effect and why it's a very positive effect for that matter. We're also going to give you some analogies on that way to prove the fact that this is also a very justifiable case. Before that, let's go on to know. Let's go on to the model claim from government side today, right? First of all, we don't think this is a debate about abusing lying anyway, right? It's not about the doctors lying over and over. It's about lying to a certain patient about their certain condition and seeing whether or not the effect of it is good. We know the goal of this debate should be at the end of the day, who can provide a better treatment for that patient? Who can heal that patient better? What we're going to tell you from government side is the fact that this placebo effect does have good effects and should be justifiable. But secondly, we think this is no. We think this is not for all cases, but in certain cases as well. But furthermore, we don't think this is just about major cases, like major diseases, right, like cancer and things like that. We think that it can also include the common cold, the flu, things like that. We think that if the doctor thinks that lying to that patient will better heal that person in that moment, we think that it's justifiable. But furthermore, what kind of lies are we talking about, right? Because we don't think that it's just like lying to that person outright. We're talking about three main lies here. Whether or not what you have or not is a disease or not, or secondly, the efficacy of that disease and the mechanisms of it, and thirdly, and most importantly, the social perceptions of that disease, which will especially pertain to children right now, right? We think that, for example, in many hospitals right now, we tell children that cancer is a good thing. We tell them that you're lucky to have cancer and you're blessed to have cancer in order to change that mentality of that patient, to better that health of that patient, to ensure the fact that they fight on, right? We think that disease is not just something that affects you, it's a fight that you have to do with your own body. And we think that in order to prepare for that fight, you need to have a proper mentality. We think that because of this will also this is justifiable. Let's go on to the role of doctors before that.
Would you also allow doctors to lie about possible side effects in order to nudge a patient towards certain surgeries or operations that the doctor believes is going to be good for the patient?
Well, we're going to talk about when these people can lie or not, but we're going to say the fact that if it does benefit that way, if the goal of that thing is to heal that person, which should be the goal of a doctor, we think that it should be justifiable. Yes, seriously. Let's go on to the role of doctors, right? We don't think that doctors are just there to look after your physical health. They're there to look after the mental health as well, right? There's a reason why in many hospitals, and for example America and the United States, doctors not only act as your physical doctor, but they also play the role of therapists in many hospitals as well, right? The reason behind that is due to the fact that they are not only responsible for as a patient, for your physical health and your body, but they're also responsible for your mental health as a whole, right? We think that they're also, because of this, there's a very uniqueness as to why these people can lie and why they have a justification to lie. We think that's for two main reasons, right? First of all, if you have a doctor, especially in long-term diseases, they understand what kind of mentality that you are in. They understand through communication. They understand through your basic facial expressions. They understand by seeing you every single day what kind of mentality you're in, and through those kind of analysis, they are able to evaluate whether or not that mentality is good for you or not, whether or not that mentality harms you in some way, right? But secondly, we think that they're also an expertise in these diseases and these conditions, right? They understand the fact as to when these things should be used and what mentality these patients should be in at best. We think the only actor who can do this is a doctor who has expertise at this thing. But furthermore, why does this extend to lying, right? What is the benefit of why is it justifiable for doctors to lie in these moments? We think that's for two main reasons. First of all, it's out of good intent. We don't think we're going to take the characterization of the opposition side that it's out of bad intent. We think that all doctors doctors are there to like better their patient, to heal that patient in some way. It's the whole reason that they become doctors, right? And that because of this, it's justifiable because of the fact that it's out of good intent. It's for the bettering of the patient. We think that the doctor does have that justification. But secondly, we think that in many cases, lying actually enhances the effects of certain medicines and of other certain ideas, right? We think that because of this, the method to caring people is not absolute, and because of that, this can also be taken as a way of healing. But let's go on to mental health, right? Because we think this is a very important point coming from government side today. The effects of your mental health affect the mechanism of the medicine, of the kind of treatment that you receive, right? For example, if you are very depressed, if you are very sad, or if you have immense amount of stress in some way, due to that, your immune system also often goes down. You have no incentive to try and take that medicine, to try and fight more. Your mental health in a whole is degraded because of that. And because of that, your physical health also has effect on that. And because of that, we think that the people are no longer want to take the medicine. But furthermore, that medicine does not have as much effect as it should be, right? Because for that reason, the mental health of you often affects how that medicine works, right? But let's talk about more positively as to how this placebo effect will be effective, right? We think that, for example, as we showed you, in the United States, when a child has leukemia, they are told that the chemotherapy that they are doing will 100% work, but furthermore, it is good for them in some way, right? Despite the fact that chemotherapy often does not work, or often it is very harmful to your health. The reason behind that is because your mental health as a whole actually affects how the white blood cells within your body flow in and flow out, whether or not they increase or not, right? In that same way, because of the fact that your mental health affects the way that the disease not only spreads, but how that medicine works, we think that the mental effect and the placebo effect will actually make a positive effect, no matter that you have a positive mentality, meaning the fact that your happiness is prioritized, meaning the fact that your body will be in the top shape that it can in order to get that medicine, in order for that medicine to work, right? But furthermore, we think that this kind of lying is important, as you said, for the fight against your things. When, for example, people tell you that chemotherapy does not work when you're a patient, you have no incentive to try to get better. You think that there is no medicine that will work in any single way. You know, the only way that you will be incentivized to try to better yourself, to try to heal yourself, especially in terminal diseases, is by being lied to, saying that you have positive effects. For those reasons, for the bettering of the patient, for the treatment of the patient, we're happy to stand on the proposition side.
Okay, thank you, Prime Minister. I'd like to call up the leader of opposition.
Madam Chair, the placebo effect will not work 100%, and if it doesn't work, the patient, the worst case scenario, the patient will suffer and regret their rest of their life. And also, the doctor should tell the truth for the patient in terms of the good relationship. So therefore, we are happy to oppose this motion. So today, I'm going to talk about one thing, so how relationship between doctor and patient should be. And yeah. Okay, so before that, one responses. The scientist said the doctor is the best actor and they're experts, so they can lie and in order to cure mentally and more effectively. However, Madam Chair, this is the not only way to care the mentally, and they never explain. So why is it the best way to cure the mentally? So for example, the family can talk or cheering and with music or and. The doctor, the only doctor should not lie because there is expert, and there is only one the person to know the knowledge and how to cure. So this should not try. And also, Madam Chair, as I told you, the placebo effect are not guaranteed to work 100% in the future. So there's just only the possibility. So and it will be highly likely to fail. So even if it will work, just 2 weeks or 1 month, so we will the just trying in order to for the placebo effect, but the doctor deceived to the patient at the moment, and we believe this is wrong, and I will explain further in my speech. So, Madam Chair, so how relationship between the doctor and the patient should be? We believe the relationship should be based on the truth. Why? Because the doctor is expert and the only one person who can give the treatment to the patient, and patients totally rely on to the doctor to cure their diseases, and because they don't have no knowledge and do not reach the stage they are in the diseases. So that's why the patients pay money to the doctor, and so doctor have a duty. For example, they don't have to leak the personal information, and also have to give the treatment, and also finally they have to tell the truth. And so based on this, the doctor and the patient discuss and how to decide how to give the treatment. And however, the government side rely the patient for the possibility to cure the placebo effect. So, but which means the doctor did not fulfill and their duty and break the relationship. This good relationships, and we read. So after plan, there's the the harm exists, and there's two harm, Madam Chair. So firstly, if the doctor deceives the patient for the placebo effect, which means the doctor do not respect the patient's body autonomy, and also, so for example, if the girl suffered from the cancer and they don't know the situation which they are in and in which the stage they are in, but gradually the girl is losing hair every day and suffered from the pain, but the doctor say it's okay, it will be fine, and you can be better better. But the girl totally believe the doctor, and she thinks it's okay, but she's unsure what's happened in the future, and which means the girl in the so unstable situation, and but the girl know their own body and understand the pain, but they cannot know the future. This means the doctor cannot fully to give the treatment to the girl, and the relationship between the girl and the doctor are not the best condition. Yes.
In many cases, we depend upon the doctor to choose the best judgment for that patient. For example, when the patient is unconscious in some way, right? That's why is it that we cannot depend upon the doctor's good or the doctor's intent at all times? Yeah,
because the doctor, just doctor know the girl and know the patient 1 week or 2 weeks, and just a few times, and the doctor cannot know everything about the patient. So which means the patient and the family should be the actor to decide their treatment and their choices. and Madam Chair, and second harm is like, for example, the patient cannot decide how to spend their end of the life. And for example, the terminally ill person like Oji-chan and who suffer from the cancer, and he has just only the 2 months left. But the doctor deceived to the Oji-chan to cure and for the placebo effect. And but Oji-chan has like 3 children or like 9 grandchildren, but Oji-chan lives in Hokkaido. Such children are living in Tokyo, and like it takes many time to meet, and they want to meet, but Oji-chan don't know, and Oji-chan thinks it's okay after leaving the hospital they can meet, but like end of the time the Oji-chan cannot meet the children. So this is the worst case scenario. The patient cannot decide at the end of their life the best choices. So therefore we will, the doctor should tell the truth. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, reader opposition. Next, I'd like to call upon the Prime Minister. So I'm going to talk about 2 things. I'm firstly going to talk about the doctor's right to do these sort of things. We think lying, in certain occasions, is a legitimate method, like medicine, that it may have side effects, but effective to certain individuals that have negative images of themselves, who do not have confidence in themselves, that having information of the actual information of side effect, or like their imagination having the most negative consequences to the procedure of their cure, and they might, in the worst case, die. But we think it's important that these people are able to cure, and that's about role that's the goal, obviously, we want to have at most of this debate. Second, look at the impact of placebo effect. I'm going to deal with firstly this shock that they really didn't deepen and enhance, and tell you what is the most important thing. And given the fact that it's important in certain occasions, why that's more overriding than the harm that they want to talk about. For that couple independent rebuttal, they talked about families. That like Oji-chan, something like that. Firstly, we think that existence of family cheering or helping is not mutually exclusive. Yeah. And we do recognize that families, it's important to consult with families. Like for example, in this Oji-chan example, if the family knows about this grandfather that he really wants to spend his last life in an important way, and the family tells it to the doctor, we think the doctor will obviously consider it to not tell a lie that actually tells us a lot of information. Yeah. We think to the extent that these individuals find something important like knowing the truth, or identifying options like rationally decide by themselves, or having these individuals know these sort of things. We think that families will know it to a certain extent. We see doctors who will be able to identify that information and make concessions and negotiations to make it the best way as a doctor to provide the best information. But the point is, no thank you, it doesn't deny the existence of certain patients that to certain patients lying is most effective. The fact that they know certain information would be damaging the procedure of the improvement of health conditions. No thank you. Secondly, they talked about bodily autonomy. The same way, if they identify their choice as an important thing, and they stand in front of the doctor in that manner that they want to do it in their way, we think that doctors are obviously able to identify that fact that these people want that information. We think the characters that we're talking about are really people that are obvious in that line would be damaging. We think the characteristics often the case of people that are sort of negative, or like knowing these sort of things, they fear the current situation, those sort of things. We think and even if we concede to a certain extent that there might be damages, we think there's an overriding benefit that I'm going to enhance my substantive. So first, medicine is obviously the doctor's role. So medicine's purpose is obviously to cure people. That obviously was a poison in the first place. But we do these sort of things, the actual bad thing, because it works. No, thank you. We already told you that lying does work. That having no confidence in you or in the medicine damages your blood cycle and immune system. And obviously, medicines only stand to support and supplement the effectiveness of the immune system of your own body. So to the extent that your immune system is damaged, that is really damaging to damaging to the curing of the disease that you're obviously suffering with. And sure.
In terms of the patient and doctor relationship, do you think consent is important?
So that's something I'm going to deal later in this substantive. But let me talk about this more. So, and we do concede that there are negative consequences to certain individuals, to patients, that lying may not be effective to a certain extent. The point is that even with normal medicines, there are side effects to the most relevant people. That we are able to identify to a certain extent to certain patients that this medicine A works, but even in these patients, there are patients that will face side effects or medicines that may not work to these patients. But still, doctors are able to choose that medicine at their discretion and able to decide that, even if the effect is not 100%, to the extent that doctors can identify whether it's effective to a certain extent. They have a right to deploy that medicine. Or it tells that lie is also a medicine in the analogous way. No, thank you. And why were doctors able to identify that? First, we already told you that these sort of characteristics of individuals can be seen by the attitude and experience of doctors. That doctors have seen a lot of patients, that how they react as they told the truth, how they react as they see the consequence of the medicines or diseases, and they know that seeing it in positive nuance or saying it in negative nuance really affects the patient's mentality or based on certain patients' characteristic or attitude that they've shown to the doctor. Then doctors are sort of able to identify these sort of people. To these people, lying would work, and to these people may not work. And to the extent that it's hard to identify with them, we're okay with using counselors so they're able to identify the mental characteristics of these people. And even if we once again concede it's only a limited case where these lying would have a serious consequence to these people, to the extent that if it's effective to a certain individual, we think it would obviously work. And that's why we think these people have a right to do so. So. And also to the engagement, to the POI about relation. We say most patients want improvement, and if that lie will lead to improvement, we think that's something that they would consider the doctors doing good job. No, thank you. And once again, if they really consider truth, those sort of things really important, that will be shown in the firm face and nuance of the patient's conversation with the doctor after all. Then we think that most cases that they want to identify about this relation, trust with these doctors, these most relevant people of their case are most minimums that will take place that harm. And the really rare case is something we already unfortunately concede in this procedure of medicine, because side effects, some people, 1% will face it, but we still do it for the sake of the 99% that it works obviously. So we think that minimum case is not important in this debate. They have to prove that will be the majority, that doctors can't identify these individuals. There, no thanks. Now let's look at the second thing about placebo effect. They talked about shock, but they didn't talk about why that shock was so damaging after all. We firstly told you obviously that shock is only shock is something that isn't really mutually exclusive. That we recognize these shocked people really are worried about their disease in the first place. So telling them the worst consequence earlier means that they'll be shocked already after all. It's important that the exclusive part is only the term of more positive mentality, and then in that term, these patients are more able to improve their medical conditions, which they never have on their side of the house. Because I already told you that positive mentality, confidence in that medicine after all, those sort of things are important for your improvement after all. If there's no term or time for them to have medical consequences, that's rather damaging for the improvement of that specific patient after all. And what we rather told you is that they are necessary people that doctors can identify. If they're people, we see the individual aren't really confident of themselves, if they know a bit of the side effect and will have imagine it in a really negative way, they're not going to be able to use those medicines. And if they may be despair, not to go to the hospital, and that negative mentality damages people not to be able to cure these sort of things. So the extent that these people do exist, doctors can identify and lying is effective, that is the medicine these doctors can use.
Thank you, Dr. Prime Minister. I'd like to call the Dr. Leader of the Shin.
Madam Speaker, sure, placebo effects work for some people, and we're happy to say maybe even for the majority it may work. Maybe for the majority it may not work. the fact is we absolutely do not care about that, right? Because we think that even if it's effective, there's a bigger role of the doctor. And the doctor's only role isn't just simply to heal the patient, but it's also to not act in a morally repugnant way, to make sure that they act and treat the patients with respect, with dignity, and with truth, and that's the side that we support on our side of the house. They said it's the same with medicine, right? With side effects and so on. It's completely different because with medicine, people understand it, people have knowledge of what they're going into, people understand the side effects that it could cause, then people make a conscious decision what they want, whether they want to go for it or not, right? We think we need to completely understand their case, right? Let's look at what they said. They said it's good to lie to patients because the end goal and the only goal is to heal the patient. But on the other hand, saying this might not even save people, right? But the response that Sayaka gave to my POI was, they're willing to lie about side effects before going into surgery as well. They're willing to lie about all these things that could happen to the body of the patient in order to make sure that the patient goes through a certain operation that the doctor primarily feels is going to be good, regardless of how the patient feels, regardless of how the patient believes what he's going to be, like what's going to be best for him, regardless of what he wants to be done to his body. They're just going to lie and create that artificial consent, even in a circumstance where consent is necessary. And you need to understand the fact that a doctor-patient relationship, consent is one of the most important ideas that exist. You need to make sure that the patient fully understands what they're going into, because obviously they're paying for the treatment as well. They're the ones who are most affected by this, and therefore it's not simple money. It's not about 100 yen or so. It's a couple of $1 million, right? $1 million yen. And therefore you need to understand the fact that consent in itself is important, also recognizing the fact that the idea of bodily integrity also exists. People have a right to decide what happens to their own body. People have a right to decide how they want to end their life, whether they want to keep on living or not in terms of life prolonging mechanisms and so on. What they're going to do is they're just going to take away the right of patients to make that decision, the decision which is most important and most integral to their belief, most integral to their life, the one that the one that's most related to their identity in their life and how they end their life. And they'll say, we'll artificially manufacture it, which obviously is an invalid consent, but they're going to forcibly retrieve that consent and then go about cutting open people's bodies because they just feel that that's the best thing to do. We don't think that's something important, and we don't think that's something moral to do when you consider the role of the doctor in terms of the patient-doctor relationship. Something that Hasaido House hasn't really responded to, which Chihiro told you. We told you that patients are people who wholly and fully trust the doctors. They pay for the treatment with the full belief and full confidence that they will be good to them, that they will do what is best to them, but also that they will treat them with dignity, with respect, and make sure that they are the ones in full control of the treatment and are the ones who are at the end benefiting. That's why medical professionals also have the idea of the patient-doctor confidentiality, because that relationship is based purely on fact, purely on trust, and purely on the idea that this person is someone you can wholeheartedly trust. That's the idea behind the patient-doctor relationship, and that's why doctors try and do what is best and what is true and what is most effective for the patient based on that framework. We told you also from our side of the house that other sources of hope also exist. Things like religion, things like faith, but also if what they're concerned about is the mental health, why is lying the only and the most effective method of improving the mental health of a patient? And then the second question is, why must it be the doctors who have that direct duty and the direct responsibility to the patient actively going against what the patient wants or actively lying to these people, right? We told you there are other actors within families. They said it's not mutually exclusive, right? Fair enough, that could also happen on the other side, but what we're defending is doctors not doing that, and that's something mutually exclusive. We told you there's also other ways to change social perceptions. Things like medical experts can write theses and papers if they're not directly linked to a patient. The question that side of the house has to prove in their burden is to say, why must the doctors who have that direct responsibility towards that patient actively lie towards that patient that they have that duty to? Unless they answer that question, they're nowhere in this debate. But they then said doctors have the ability to choose, so therefore it's an extension of that. We don't think so, because even when in like cases, right, the reason why doctors choose, or what doctors do, is they show you what is probably the most effective method. But at the end of the day, the person who makes that choice to decide which one they undergo, which treatment they go for, is the patient themselves. Obviously, because the idea of consent, the idea of bodily integrity is something for fundamental within that relationship. But moreover, you need to consider the fact that the Deputy Prime Minister then came up with a very wishy-washy stance saying, but if they think that the patient does not want to be lied to, they're not going to lie. The question then becomes, what do you do when it clashes head-on with a scenario where, on one hand, if you lie, it's going to be most effective and achieve your end goal of saving the patient. On the other hand, the patient, and you can obviously tell that the patient doesn't want to be lied to. Who do you prioritize? Do you prioritize your role, that step that you brought up, by saying we need to save patients and heal patients? Or do you go with the DPM stance that says, well, we'll prioritize the patient's role, which goes completely against what you said? So that's something of a very wishy-washy stance that you need to recognize on the that side. Yes?
When you pay that 1 million yen for that doctor that you hired, for example, you are paying that 1 million yen to get healed, right? Considering that you characterize them as fully trusting that doctor, won't you fully trust them for them to choose the best way for you to get healed?
No, because you're not paying just simply for the treatment. You're paying for the full treatment and also for the relationship that exists between the doctor and the patient, including confidentiality, including the ability to trust that person as well. So unless that side of the house can tell us why that's not necessarily important, that POI doesn't necessarily make sense. But the prerequisite for placebos to even work in the first place is that you don't tell patients that it's happening, you don't even tell the families that it's happening, or even if you tell the families, they can't tell the patients, and the patients are the ones who, at the end of the day, consent to these procedures. You now create a situation where the patients, families, and society now knows that the doctors can lie and that they will actively lie to you if they think that it's for the end goal, right? That creates a situation where society in general becomes more skeptical towards doctors, medical treatments, and healthcare in general, and now you break the fundamental base idea that they will treat you with dignity, sincerity, respect, and truthfulness. That creates a situation where people are going to be unwilling to cooperate or sign up for really genuine treatments, because now you create the idea within their head that the doctor might be lying to you, the doctor might not be doing what is best for you. We think that doubtfulness, especially in the medical framework, which is most important to you as an individual, is going to be problematic. And for all these reasons, our side defends patients and our side defends the choice of patients.
Thank you, Deputy Leader of Opposition. I'd like to call upon Governor West.
Yuki took our stance. We say the problem of the status quo is in most cases, or in all the cases, doctors are not allowed to tell a lie. We think that is a problem. And she kind of told you that doctors can consider lots of factors. And if doctors think that it is very important to know the fact for that patient, or if you really think that family members are really caring about him, or that patient is really caring about family members, maybe doctors can have some consideration whether to tell it to the patients or not, or they can call the family members without telling him the fact that he will die in 1 month. We don't think that is a contradiction. That's a clear stance on our side of the house. To achieve the better treatment, which won't be achieved on their side of the house. And they haven't engaged lots of benefits. We told you what they mainly said was dignity. Consent is important. So I'm going to cover this point in my speech. So I'm going to talk about 3 things in my speech. Firstly, what is the character of doctors? Because they exaggerate the existence or character of doctors by saying that they rampantly abuse this system. We don't think so. We're going to cut this logic. But secondly, which is better actor to decide on treatment? No, thank you, doctors or patients, which is a very important core clash in this round. But lastly, whether the consent, which they really want to protect, is that important or not? So first case, what is the character of the doctors? They say doctors sometimes under evaluate the risk and they tell it like having no risk at all. That is fine. So first of all, we don't think that government would abuse this system just by telling them this has no risk. Sometimes it can happen, but if it led to, for example, some accident or lots of patients die, maybe that doctor would criticize by the media so harshly, thank you, or family member would criticize him so harshly, which makes it difficult for doctors to continue his own job, and he loses incentive to do so, and he has more room to consider such kind of stuff. And we don't think that unnecessarily under-evaluation happens on their side of the house. Secondly, we think that government is government actively gives them authentication of doctors, meaning that doctors also have the role or duty to subscribe to the belief or the fundamental goal which government wants to protect, which is, we say, life, because life is the basis of everything, and in most cases, suicide is, suicide is not discouraged, and also killing is a crime, and doctors are created to protect the individual life or individual life. And we think to protect that, doctors exist, and we should consider this part, and based on this, let's move into second criteria, which is better actor to decide, doctors or patients. We heard from the opposition that individuals are better actors. Why is that? Firstly, because of the existence of body autonomy, we mustn't introduce them. But secondly, they like to spend their final time in their own best way. So, first of all, for the bodily autonomy, it is based on the assumption that all the patients can calculate well and can have the rational calculation and rational decision at any moment. We don't think so. Even though, for example, the risk is 10%, for the patients who are desperate, it looks like 80%, and he won't take that act, even though it is beneficial and effective for him. Shock. Once the shock was given, for example, you have just 1 month. How do you feel? If you're a patient who have, who are having, for example, the dream to attend marriage of your grandchildren, maybe you feel that I can't do that, I'll suffer. You lose the incentive to take medicine, even though it can have some possibility that you will cure, it is effective. We don't think that that person has very rational calculation, and on that point, we don't think that consent itself, that bodily autonomy does not matter that much. That is why, for example, in the most cases, not the signature of that person, but also signature of family members should be considered when deciding lots of treatment or things. Meaning that we don't think that bodily autonomy of that patient is not absolute. And even if that is that important, as Sayaka told you from the beginning, they gave up autonomy to some extent. They gave up their autonomy and rely on the doctors for some treatment or method of treatment, meaning that it is not that important. For the second point, which is about the right to spend your final time in the best way, again, why can they do that in the rational calculation? If you feel depressed, if you feel that, or if you're having a mental disease, you can't do that. After the shock was given to you, maybe it would be definitely difficult to do. So what we told you was simple. Doctors are better actor because they have some conditions, they know the conditions of patients really well, thank you, or they know the precedents, from the precedents, they know how the disease could be cured by certain method, by having lots of stuff. But more importantly, throughout this policy, know-how toward placebo effect will also accumulated. Because more and more doctors start to utilize this, and you can understand in what circumstances it will work well, in what circumstances it will not work well, which will increase the quality and accuracy of the treatment, which will be more beneficial. No, thank you. So last case,
Okay. When the placebo doesn't work, which your side concedes is a big possibility as well, isn't the shock of the patient going to be a lot bigger?
If that does not work, and if the doctors are fearing of that backlash from the patients or backlash from society, maybe he will not do, which is explained by my first part of the about. No, thank you. The problem is the doctors cannot do that, even though he thinks it could be effective at all. We think that is a problem. So last case, whether the consent is important. They said consent is important and artificial consent is a bad thing. Why is that? Because firstly, they pay money and time for that treatment, but secondly, dignity of individual has to be respected. So first of all, as Sayaka pointed out in the POI, they came to the hospital and they paid money for that treatment. If they do not think that that is effective, they won't pay for the treatment at all. But the fact that they are paying for that treatment, meaning that they have the instinct, desire to try to cure that disease, meaning that it will be better for the doctors to decide the best way for them, not only scientifically proven part, but also mental part, which matters in to decide the efficacy of treatment. We think that is very important. Regarding that, dignity they want to say is not that important. And if you think that is that important, doctors can know throughout communication with that patient, communication with the family members, or looking at those precedents, and doctors can tell whether dignity really matters throughout this method or not. The problem is, we can't do that kind of act even even if it's defective on their paradigm. We can change that structure, which makes it decrease the quality and accuracy of treatment throughout not only scientifically proven part but also mental part, and we can have more and more precedents to make the accuracy much better. That's why we stand beside proposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel Webb. I'd like to call up the opposition Webb.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Every single claim from government bench is based on one assumption, which is the doctors can fully understand the mental condition of patients. They are perfectly because the doctors are professional, they can understand the mentality. We say that is not the case because doctors are different actors from the patients who are living the very condition of in the process of disease. So we from the beginning we doubt it. What if placebo fails? What if these patients are consequently die at the end of the day? The doctors cannot be responsible for these consequences because they are the total lie, and we say that is the clear that is against the duty of doctors, so we still very proud to oppose. So 3 questions in this way. Firstly, what is the duty of doctors? And secondly, the problem they told us regarding the status quo, and secondly, the effectiveness of the placebo. So firstly, the duty of doctors. Madam Chair, we have to say that characterization from government bench about the doctor's duty is weird. Why is that so? Because they told us primary duty of doctors is to heal the patient's mentality. But Madam Chair, we say that is not true. Because primary duty of doctors to cure the physical condition of patients, right? Because if the patients are so demanding the physical, mental health, they can rely on other kind of things such as believing religion or depending on a family or friends. But uniquely, doctors are different. They are the ones who know their the physical conditions, and they are technically professional who can cure your physical disease. So that is why relationship between doctors and patients must be based on a truth and the reality, because that is a unique importance regarding this relationship. We told you how that knowing the truth is uniquely important for you to decide, for example, what kind of treatment you want to be given. This kind of every single decision should be based on truth and fact. So that is why their duty of doctors is fails. So secondly about a problem they told us. The main problem from government bench about a status quo is like this. When patients are told the truth by doctors, sometimes the condition of patients getting worse, or sometimes patients must be confused, and that is the harm of the status quo. I have 3 responses. Firstly, sometimes patients are depressed to know the truth, but majority of the cases, Madam Chair, we say this kind of depression can be healed gradually. Why is that so? Because majority cases this kind of mental depression is temporal one, right? Because there are we told you how in friends or family in surrounding the patients can encourage patients and can be cooperative and supportive in the status quo. So in this mental depression is not so serious problem in this sense. A second response here is actually, even if some patients cannot get rid of depression, we say the harm of this policy is larger than these kind of harms of the side of us, because we told you how under their paradigm, for example, the patients are deceived, and patients do not know when they die. This situation, the patients themselves cannot prepare about how to end their life. This kind of harm is not larger compared to the harm of the status quo. And last response Sadly, last response is like effective because effectiveness of placebo is not 100%. Rather, the success rate is very small. In this sense, even if doctors tell a lie to the patients, we say we cannot see the benefit of their side of their side of the house. So, and uniquely told you how under their scenario, like the general patient would be skeptical towards the doctor's relationship because the patients know because patients do not cannot know to what extent doctors are telling a lie to them. We say this skepticism is rather counterproductive to even heal the mentality that they want to solve. Yes, ma'am.
If your patient comes to you and says that he wants to commit suicide due to his pain and his disease, is it okay to lie to him and say that things will get better? But furthermore, why would doctors have any incentive to lie to their patients in other cases than these dangerous cases?
Okay, so what we are saying is actually every single decision of patient should be based on a fact and truth because doctors cannot fully perfectly understand the mentality of the patients because they are different actors, right? So Madam said because patients must take a responsibility of their treatment or diseases, so they should be the one who have the right and who have the choice to decide about their right. So let's see about the effectiveness of placebo. So mainly DPM told us for some patients telling a lie is very effective. Yes, we can see. The problem here is actually even if in some minor cases placebo can be effective, we say the harm we told you is more should be more considered. Why? Because when placebo fails in a major cases, Madam Chair, we say that is so problematic for the patient. We told you two kinds of harms from outside the house. So because on their under their paradigm, on one hand they told us on one hand doctors will tell lie, but on the other hand doctors will continue the treatment upon the patients. So in this that is bad because patients will be forced to pay the medical costs which they hadn't consented to because they are getting the treatment that they didn't know. Madam Joyce, this is totally against the duty of doctors in the first place, and moreover, the patients must be suffering from the side effect that they haven't consented to. And second harm of their side of the house is actually, as my parent has told you, the patients cannot cannot decide about the way of treatment and also how to end their life. We say that kind of harm cannot offer them any kinds of benefit from their side of the house, so we are very proud of us.
Thank you, Teacher Webb. I'd like to call the lecture speaker from negative bench.
There are white lies and there are black lies. There are times to lie and there are times where you should not lie. There are people who can lie and people who cannot and should not lie. We think that the role of doctors and doctors in general fall into these categories. Number one, white lie, black lie. We don't care about the incentive. Secondly, is it a time to lie or is it not a time to lie? I think that it's a unique situation, and even Psycho admitted that it only happens in severe cases when you really need something to do this, right? It means that we're talking about instances when the people and their life really depends on this moment, on this treatment or not, right? In those instances, we think that truthfulness is more important and to be able to treat these people, the patients, with dignity. But recognizing the role of doctors, we think that these people are people who should not fundamentally lie to the patients. Because the role of doctors isn't simply to cure the patient, it's not simply to heal. There are other things involved, and that is to treat the patient with truthfulness, with dignity, and with respect. We told you why that's the fundamental reason we have a patient-doctor relationship. We told you why that's the even fundamental reason why we have things like doctor-patient confidentiality treatment in the first place. Even that sort of house considered and concedes to the fact that healing the patient is not the utmost the most important role of the doctor, because the Deputy Prime Minister conceded that when patients want truth, they may consider it, even if it goes against the help that the patient needs, right? That's a concession coming from their side of the house, that the role of the doctors isn't fundamentally and most importantly to help the patients, but there are other moral things and moral duties a doctor has and moral responsibilities a doctor has towards the patient themselves. We told you that there are other actors that exist in society as well to give this moral support to these patients if moral support is what the problem is. They haven't really answered the question yet of why uniquely doctors with this patient-doctor relationship with that patient, with that individual, must carry out this duty, must actively lie to them, and must actively try and help them in this sense. That's something that Southern House hasn't really told us. But we also told you that there is a consent involved, the idea of consent, the idea of body integrity, and how the right to choose what happens to your own body is uniquely important, especially in cases of medical procedure. The only response we got from Kozuka was to say, well, body autonomy isn't important because they already rely on doctors, they already pay the money for health, and so on and so forth. But even in those cases, you still require the consent of patients before any treatment, before any operation. And that's a fundamental reason to say bodily autonomy and body integrity, and that idea of consent is something fundamental to that doctor-patient relationship, even under the status quo right now. We told you that even under that scenario, right, we said very importantly that this is something that doesn't necessarily happen under their case, because right from the very beginning they said they're willing to lie even about side effects before a surgery. They're willing to actively lie to the patients in order to nudge them towards a certain area. I think that fundamentally goes against firstly the role of the doctors, but secondly the idea of integrity, and thirdly the idea that people have a right to decide what happens to their own body. So what is the actual fundamental harms or the benefits that happens? Under their side, it's fluffy. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. For some people it works, for some people it doesn't work. So that they don't really have a clear benefit to give you, right? But moreover, you need to understand the fact that we told you how it rather becomes counterproductive. When you increase the skepticism that people have towards the medical facilities in general, and when people become unwilling to take on genuine treatments as well, when you grade the area of that trust that people have to these medical professions, we told you how that's going to be a concrete harm that happens to every single person, right? But the POI that came from Dr. Marina was also like case shifting on that side, because they then said it's only going to happen in cases when people want to commit suicide. But when you look at your notes, right, the Prime Minister's opened her speech by saying we'll do it for any time, even in cases like flu, even in cases like influenza. That's a complete case shift that happened from that side, and that's something that you shouldn't do, especially in an Asian debate. So at the end of the day, you also need to consider the oji-chan that happened in the debate, all that funny stuff as well, and we think that we're the ones that provided you analysis, logic, and entertainment. For that, we win.
Great, thank you. The final Gonacor, a referee speaker from Fountain Bench. If you talk about Asians, I wanted to hear more from the leader of the option, so I could engage us. But put aside that stupid thing, the thing is that we do agree that consent is somewhat important, that we do agree that some person in our world may find confidentiality important. But the question was that they had to answer was, why does some people's consideration mean that every people should be in that framework and should be assumed that they consider confidentiality more important than cure? That many people desire better health conditions, that lie is only like a method to cure these people, that, uso wa hoben, Then, why is it, sorry for the Japanese, but why is it that they could say that all people should be in that framework, that they only told us that every person should have the access to information. That was their burden to identify, they didn't prove that. Yeah. I'm going to look at three things. First, I'm going to look at this idea of consent. Second, the effect of placebo. Thirdly, doctor's role. So first, consent. So once again, I don't agree some exist, but they didn't tell us to what extent, how many is that the majority. We told you people desire cure, and to that extent they would sacrifice trust or information to that extent. And that was something they never engaged with. And that we rather also told you that given that characterization, social skepticism, those sort of things obviously doesn't stand, because that is implicit rebuttal. And we further say, it was our POI, which they didn't really respond to, was that in certain occasions like suicide, we have a right to provide life to make things better so that they do not
kill themselves, and that they did not provide the impact of having that shock after the whole. It was only nuanced and not elaborated to that extent. And then also they only had this idea. So we would concede to the idea of consent, but they never told us why consent was important at the expense of a longer time in hospital, longer time in suffering of side effects, those sort of things. But we told us the majority would take the latter as something more damaging after the whole. So the consequence is that some would consider confidentiality important. Let's look at the second thing, the placebo. We told you mental confidence was important for the improvement of health conditions. That some people would think that some people knowing some information is damaging to that, and doctors were able to identify that using counselors, using the experience of having conversation with their patients, things like that. And then we told you that was fundamentally important because if they do not have confidence in them, they may not use the medicine. The immune system will be damaged and nothing can ever work these patients. Then they will obviously die or have to suffer in the hospital. The engagement was that other alternative factors like family, friends can supplement that mental confidence. Not mutually exclusive, but more importantly, we have to do our best to cure these sort of situations. Because we don't know whether the disease will become worse. We have to go to the hospital as soon as possible, not engaged. And then they told us some will fail, but to what extent will they fail? To the extent that they did not engage what doctors cannot identify, then that's only a minimal case. We would concede to that. And they tell us it's fluffy. Any medicine is fluffy, but some might work, some will work. So what is the problem with that claim? So let's look at the third thing. We told you, as a consequence of this speech, that some people, it might not work or fail. Some people might consider consent important, but the majority, it works, and that many people consider cure important. Then we have to consider the doctor's role. The doctor's role and the doctor's right was to put methods like medicine to people, assuming that in the majority case would work. Side effects exist. So some people, they assume that it works, but it would not work. But that was never justification, deprives that legality of that method to shut out access to many people that desire that cure and is effective to that cure. Yeah. So the extent that they only proved 2 people out of 1,000 or 10,000 people in the world, while we rather prove to the majority 8,000, 9,000 people in the world that is relevant to the debate would work, doctors are right to do so.
Thank you. Now the leaders will continue for your guys' cooperation.
部屋俺たち
あんのかなどうだろういない
ここで寝るから
日曜日出てた方が多分気が早いんじゃない
GHQ は聞いてみる
俺は僕がですね、取らないし